Okay, I'm recording right now. So, would you mind just giving a general overview of where you're at right now in your life and what you've been through the past handful of years with everything that's gone on?
Yeah. Right now I am currently out on uh, unsecured bond. I'm waiting to be sentenced to federal prison. Um, Earlier this year, I pled guilty to 4 counts of wire fraud and 4 counts of money laundering. Basically, all because of my gambling addiction. So I'm just in a waiting period right now. I'm waiting on my pre-sentence report, and I'll sort of know the range, the advisory guideline range that I'm looking at in terms of a prison sentence, and just sort of a waiting game, trying to make the most of every day that I have with my wife and kids until I have to go away for a little while.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we connected through a Facebook post that you posted about your wife and how this has impacted her and how she's stuck with you through all of this. Could you talk about the impact that this has had on your family and how she's been supporting you through all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I left a trail of destruction with my gambling addiction. I was a trial attorney for 12 years. And, it starts from a 30,000 foot level, the legal profession as a whole. I victimized the legal profession. It's already, as a lawyer, there's already this narrative going around. The law profession is one that relies on trust. And, even here, I live in South Carolina, and we had the whole Murdaugh saga that made a lot of news. And I'm sort of, with my crimes now, I'm adding to that narrative, and I'm making good lawyers' jobs harder now, harder
Mhm.
to gain that trust of potential clients. I victimized my law firm. I expense things that weren't completed, and they had to take those losses at the end of the year. So, some of my clients were expensed for services that weren't performed, victimized them, betrayed their trust, and then my family. My wife specifically, I live with the guilt of what I did to her every day. Um, I One of the things I did, I created a company and invoiced services to my law firm, some of which I completed, many of which I didn't complete. But without her knowledge, I listed her as general partner on that company. I mean, she had no clue that it was an active company, that I was invoicing the firm, which she also worked at the same law firm with me. She had no clue that her name was on invoices and documents. She never signed a check. She never saw an invoice. She didn't even have access to the bank account that I was depositing the money in. She didn't know it existed. Um, and so, when I was fired, she was fired as well. And she found out about her name being on these documents, not from me, but from the people who were investigating her. She was investigated by the FBI for over a year, and she fought and had to clear her name. She took a lie detector test. Obviously, she passed it because she didn't do anything wrong. But I put her through all that, and for some reason, she's decided to stick by my side. And I'm working every day to deserve that because I did her wrong, just like I victimized a lot of other people. And it amazes me, and it's really a testament to the good person that she is, and she has a great heart, and she cares about our family and our kids. And so, I'm grateful every day that she's sticking with me.
Yeah, that's amazing that you have her support. She um, with everything that happened, was it stressful for her to be put through this interrogation by the FBI and go through all that? Did it take a huge toll on her
Oh,
emotionally as well?
oh yeah. I mean, the toll, you got to think, because we have our daughter together, just turned 3 years old. And just the thought, I mean, I know I'm going to prison. But to see her go through what she went through, knowing that she did nothing wrong, and she's going through a simultaneous investigation just like I am. And the thought of, hey, you never know with these investigations. I mean, a conspiracy is kind of easy to prove. I mean, it's hard to prove your innocence sometimes. If your name's on documents, it's hard to prove, hey, I didn't have anything to do with this, especially if she's living in the same household with me. And there are a lot of, there are a lot of ways I hid it from her. And, I had to explain all that when I was being questioned. I lied a lot. I mean, for years to cover up the shame of my gambling addiction. I just lied, and I felt terrible about it. But yeah, the thought that we both might go away, and what's going to happen to our daughter and my three boys, what's going to happen to them. And yeah, and she's never done anything wrong. I mean, I drank a lot, probably was an alcoholic for many years. This gambling addiction, I've been gambling since I was 15 years old. But she is really a good soul and a good person. And, to see her suffer and go through all the investigation and the stress, it kills me. And I hate, like I say, I hate that I put her through that.
Yeah, absolutely. You said you started gambling at 15. Could you talk about your history with gambling and what you started first gambling on, and then what you were gambling on when it really became out of control? I think I lost you a little bit. I think I lost you, Chris. Waiting on Chris to rejoin. Maybe his phone died. But yeah, so there's been, you know, countless studies to show that gambling when you're young dramatically increases your risk of having a gambling addiction later in your life, or developing a gambling addiction while you're still young. Um, that's why there's a legal gambling age. Some people say that it should not uh, be 18, that it should not be 21, that it should be even later in life. Hey, Chris.
Hey, sorry about that. Something happened with my phone. Apologize for that.
Oh, no worries at all. Um, I was in the middle of asking you about how you said you started gambling at 15. Could you talk about your history with gambling? What you were gambling on when you were 15, and then what you were gambling on, and how you were gambling later when everything became out of control.
Yeah, so my introduction to gambling, just give you a little background. I was born in '83. A few years after that, my dad became chief of police in my hometown of Hartsville, South Carolina. He was chief of police for about a decade, and my dad had a big heart, but he was an alcoholic, violent man, and I really wanted to be close to him. I think I sought that closeness my entire life. And, some of the only things he did was drink and gamble. Every Wednesday night, he ran a poker game with everybody that was important in town, sheriff's deputies, police officers, judges, state legislators. They were all there every Wednesday night. And probably by the time I was 12 or 13, I was allowed to, hang around, stay up. There was a pool table out there. It was a block building beside my house. And, I would just play pool and watch everything that's going on. But, as a child in my mind back then, it was like, well, these are the guys that run the county. If they're doing this, this is okay. And so that was sort of my introduction to gambling. By the time I was 15, I was making bets with two bookies in town for us, for me and my dad. And then by the time I was 16, I was allowed to sit at the table. And so, I was gambling every Wednesday night, playing poker with all the important people in the county. And so, that's sort of how it started. I went to the Citadel for college and didn't really gamble much there because it's a very, rigorous, a lot of structure. There's no time for gambling. My dad died the summer before my senior year at the Citadel, and I really started drinking heavily. Um, and then by the time I was in law school the next year, the gambling came back. So, all my career at law school was basically drinking and gambling. They sort of soothed each other. I'd lose at night gambling, and the alcohol would soothe the losses. And, I just relied on those two things going through that difficult time. I was depressed. And, those the two things I had learned, I guess, from my childhood. I just relied on those two things. Eventually, I graduated from law school. I was still gambling. I started gambling online a little bit, some offshore sports books. And then, I clerked for a federal judge, got a great job at a national law firm. And as I started traveling for all my depositions across the country, because I had a nationwide practice, I would look for a casino. Every city I was in, I would drive to the nearest casino. Probably 30 different cities I've gambled in casinos. Blackjack was my game. Um, and then eventually it moved to the phone, and that was really that just destroyed me. The FanDuel, I did the sports book when I was in states where that was legal, or I would do the fantasy here in South Carolina, the daily fantasy. And it just, as my salary increased, my gambling increased. And it never really was about the money. I mean, I've learned this now upon self-reflection. It wasn't done out of greed. I think it started as a way to be close to my dad. And then as I gambled more, I would lose. And then it became a way to chase the losses. I'm trying to get my money back. And then at some point, I just became addicted to the action. It wasn't about the money because I've won, there were 3 nights in a row in 2021. I won $100,000 3 nights in a row. And that $300,000, you know what I felt? I felt nothing. Um, I was just wondering what's on the next slate tomorrow. So when I'd win, the money meant nothing to me. I was addicted to the action. I wanted something in play. And when my gambling losses, my salary could no longer support my gambling losses, and then I made some poor choices, and now I ended up where I'm at today.
Yeah, absolutely. It can progress really, really fast. And would you say, some people call gambling a hidden addiction? Do you believe in that kind of description in terms of for years you were able to to hide the progression, the early progression of this disease, kind of before it got out of control, that it was just really easy to hide when you were traveling, from your friends and your family, kind of the early stages of everything getting out of control.
Oh, for sure. I've started writing about my journey on a Substack. It's called Writing from the Inside. But I've sort of written about my journey since I pled guilty. And one of the things that I've thought about, because a lot of people have reached out to me, and a lot of people who reach out are actually spouses of people who gamble, and they're like, what are the signs? Or they're struggling with it too, with their spouse's addiction. And I've thought a lot about this, but it's very easy to hide because you're not in the position to see it. Like, I'm an attorney. You're not going to see it in the conference rooms. You're not going to see it at 2 p.m. when I'm sitting there with my phone gambling. You think I'm doing research for the deposition, or I'm checking an email, but I'm gambling. The only time you would see it is if you're in the hotel room at 2 o'clock in the morning. When I've lost all my money and I'm sitting there, in a Nashville hotel room, because I've lost everything that I have, and I have to wait 2 weeks until I get paid again. Then you might see it. But it's very easy to hide, especially for high functioning professionals. Your doctors, your bankers, your lawyers. It's probably a little more easy to see where someone's life's unraveling, where it's already unraveling. But you have a lot of people who function very well. Like, they still do a good job in their profession. I was a great attorney. Um, I settled cases, resolved cases over $100 million for all of my clients over 10 years. Like, I performed well, but at the same time, I was self-destructing inside. And it was so easy to hide because it could be done from a phone. And I was almost living a dual life. And so I can't really tell those people, the spouses who ask me, what are the warning signs? Um, Isolation, silence, maybe. I kind of isolated myself because I was hiding it from my spouse. I would go upstairs. Maybe she thought I was on the computer doing some research. I was just sitting on my phone gambling. Um, but other than that, the addiction really grows in isolation and silence. But other than that, it's easy to hide.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like you were, I know it's, you take, full responsibility for your decisions, but do you feel like you were taken advantage of by FanDuel and other apps that, I'm not sure, did you have a VIP host? Did you have people there trying to pepper you with offers and incentives to keep going? Was that part of it?
Yeah, well, and again, I want to be clear because I do take full responsibility for my actions. I mean, the choices I made were my choices, and I've written and I talk a lot about my childhood, and I don't blame anything I did on that. I just want people to see the full picture. And I did have a host, and his name was Brett. I had a VIP FanDuel host, and I tried to quit gambling a lot of times throughout my years of gambling, and sometimes I was successful. I would could quit for a week or two, and then Brett would send me the email. And so, they would get me with, I guess they knew what my Achilles heel was. They would offer me, no matter what city I was in, for work. They could give me a VIP. He could offer me a VIP experience that I couldn't say no to. FanDuel sent me to the Masters 3 years in a row. Gave me a house to stay in, private chef. FanDuel sent me to Orlando 4 or 5 times, courtside seats at NBA games, which I loved. I really enjoyed that. Courtside at Memphis Grizzlies, hockey tickets to in Vegas, hockey tickets in Raleigh. All these experiences, and so that was the way they'd reel me back in. Or, hey man, after I've lost a bunch of money, he'd reach out. He wouldn't say, oh, you should probably quit. I'm sorry for your losses. He'd say, hey, deposit $15,000 and I'll give you $5,000 in credit. And it sounds like somebody's giving you something. You just lost a lot of money. I'm like, all right, well, $5,000 free, but it's just a hook, just a way to keep me going. When I sat down and looked at after I got fired and after everything came about, I looked for the first time. I opened the app for the first time without the intention of gambling. I looked at my activity statement, and from April 2022 to April 2024, the total amount of money I put in play that I wagered was over $11 million. And over the 2-year period of time, FanDuel made, I think it was around $670,000 just off me, just from their 6%, whatever, every transaction they get 6% off of. And so it was a business for them as long as they kept me hooked. I mean, I was a high roller to them, and they were making money every transaction. I think between that 2-year period, I placed 4,700 entries. So I mean, that's 6 entries a day. Every day, no matter if I had a deposition, no matter if it was a holiday, no matter if it was my kid's birthday, 6 bets a day, every day for 2 years. So I mean, I was just generating money for them.
And that was just when you were in South Carolina using that product, right?
Yeah.
Because that's
Yeah. My losses, I think just for that product, my loss was close to $1 million. And then, that doesn't even count the losses in the actual casinos. I mean, I was a regular at the Wynn in Vegas. I had status with them, a host with them. I lost a lot of money there. Cruise ships. I lost millions.
Yeah. It's horrendous. I mean, my view, it's a predatory business. I really think, it can be both. You can claim responsibility for decisions, but it can also be a predatory business as well. And I really think that it's out of control. Do you share those views now after going through it? Do you think it is predatory? Do you think there's something that needs to be done to prevent, to rein in the VIP host system to help people find an off ramp earlier?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and you can look at the way it's evolved, and you can really tell that it's predatory. Because think about this, they have the casino games, like your blackjack, and it used to be the random number generator, NRG, or but then they realized that people didn't really like that experience as much as the real casino experience. So what did they do? They basically developed a version of that where you have a live dealer now, live dealer blackjack, where streamed from some room somewhere, who knows where, but you actually have a dealer pulling cards from the shoe, other players sitting around the table. It's not just that random number generator without all the experiences of sitting in a casino. And they had to realize that's a way to get those gamblers that like the casino feel, typically the ones who gamble more money, right? So they just evolved the product to capture the most number of people that they can get. And it's really becoming a terrible situation. I mean, I'm hearing about kids. I've got a 16-year-old, and a lot of his friends, I hear them talking about gambling, FanDuel, DraftKings, every game now. Nobody watches sports anymore without having some action on it. And that's a dangerous situation. And I think we're going to have a big problem in a few years with our youth.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think a lot of people are calling it the next epidemic of addiction, rivaling addiction to pills or other, substances for sure. As a lawyer, do you think, I know you're not in a position right now for suing FanDuel or any other company, but do you think litigation is a route that is potentially useful for reining in these practices, or do you think it really needs to come from new state policy, and that current laws are too in favor of the industry, where it's really hard for someone to sue the industry or a sports book, after experiencing this kind of alleged predation?
I think you could take a dual track. So I do think there's legislation that's needed, but I think absolutely litigation could be a tool. And you can look at what a lot of the larger law firms, law firm I was affiliated with, we did a lot of this with big tobacco. You target the marketing. You target marketing the product, unfair trade practices. You target, I mean, you could have a negligence claim potentially, but you target the trade practices and the marketing. And I think you could be successful going at it from that angle. And so I think absolutely litigation I mean, look at the social media lawsuits right now. You can basically
Mhm.
take the same approach to the gambling industry. And I think you can be successful in that.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lawsuit just filed a couple of months ago that named a VIP host as defendants for the first time. So that was notable. Usually these kind of cases are against the company exclusively, but naming the actual VIP host as defendants seemed like a new promising legal strategy, maybe to rein some of the behavior in a little bit. Do you have any thoughts on that as a strategy of naming individual employees? I know it's they're low on the totem pole, right? In terms of the structure, the hierarchy of the company. Some of them probably are making a lot of money, but their salaries or their compensation might be tied to a commission, right? To how much their clients is losing. Do you see kind of naming the VIP host by name as defendants as a viable strategy potentially in other cases, other states?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw one lawsuit, I think, out of Florida, and
Mhm.
actually the VIP host that was named, I'm pretty sure is the same VIP host I had, FanDuel host. There are other parallel litigations where, yeah, you can sue an employee and hold the company responsible for the employee's actions, because the assumption is that the company knows what the employee's doing. Now, if he's acting outside of his scope of employment or acting, doing these things on his own, but in a situation like this, I believe, and I'm not making any, not talking about any specific people or any specific companies, but I believe that, a lot of what hosts do is directed by the company. I mean, if they're giving out promotions, they're not paying those promotions out of their own pocket. They're given a budget for these actions that they take. So I absolutely think that's a good way to get at it, because look, the company itself, other than the marketing, I mean, they're not taking the individual actions that are being done to the individual players to keep them hooked. They're doing that through their host. So I think, to get the full picture and to get it all reined in, yeah, let's, name the host and let's litigate it.
Absolutely. I know South Carolina has um, stayed away from traditional online sports betting. The daily fantasy is there, but South Carolina is one of the in the minority of states that has not legalized. The traditional DraftKings, FanDuel, etc. Um, do you plan to do any work? Talking to policymakers, trying to prevent this from coming to South Carolina, because the state has done a decent job so far, kind of keeping the full product out of its borders so far.
Knowing the South Carolina political scene as I do, um, I think it's a long time away. I don't ever see traditional sports books being legalized in South Carolina. Just knowing the
Mhm.
landscape here, but absolutely, look, anything I can do. Like I told you, the whole reason I've started writing. If I can help one person or make some policy change, it's all worth it to me. Because I have people ask me every day, why are you putting the most personal parts of your life? Why are you writing about these things? I got a long road to go. I've got, a prison term to serve once I figure out how long it's going to be. I've got to make a lot of things right with a lot of people. I need to make some apologies, and I'll have some restitution I'll be paying for the rest of my life. But once I, get over that first hurdle and I get out, absolutely, I'm willing to be an advocate for change. I will go speak to anyone, anywhere, um, about these issues, because, again, I made the
Mhm.
choices, but gambling destroyed my life, and and I hurt a lot of other people because of my gambling. And I absolutely, I'll sing it from the mountain. I'll tell my story to anyone willing to listen, and hopefully we can make some change.
Yeah, absolutely. are you looking at a sentence at a prison camp where you have freedom to write and have some more options for continuing to tell your story and have people visit you more frequently? Are you looking at that type of incarceration where it's pretty minimal security, or is it likely going to be a little bit more more intense?
I suspect, I'm gonna go on a limb and say it should be a camp. I think I'll be at a camp.
Mhm.
And I do plan to keep writing.
Yeah.
Like we talked about, my wife's willing to stay by my side. Hopefully she doesn't change her mind. Um, I plan to keep writing, and I'm gonna send it to her, and hopefully she'll keep posting it for me. Just about everything, about the experience, what it's like, and continued thoughts on addiction, gambling, taking accountability, and then rebuilding. Once everything's falling apart, rebuilding your life and trying to make a difference from it.
Absolutely. I was about a month ago. Interviewed a former sheriff in Ohio who had a devastating gambling addiction, playing blackjack at the casino in Toledo, Ohio, and he went to a prison camp related to actions that he did to feed his gambling addiction, and he was talking about how there's a lot of gambling in the prison camp. And do you have any thoughts about strategies for yourself to avoid the gambling you might see in prison? Whether it be cards or dice, or in the experience of the Ohio former sheriff that I talked to, he was saying that people were gambling on their phones in his prison camp. So do you have any concerns or fears that you're gonna kind of be exposed to gambling a lot, even while you're serving your time?
I'm sure I'll be exposed to it. I'm going to steer clear. I mean, look,
Mhm.
I'm at the
Yeah.
point now where it took me a lot of years to get here. I mean, I was
Mhm.
fired, still gambled, lost our house, still gambled. It wasn't really until I can't tell you really what made it click for me until seeing my wife investigated by the FBI and the potential of something bad happening to her and me losing my family. I think that's when it clicked. And so, my whole goal is to go serve my time, make things right, and get back to my family as soon as possible. And I just know the problems that can arise from gambling, debts in prison, potential altercations, potential losing good time, all that. And I'm going to think about that. And I'm pretty sure that's enough. Just the want to get back to my family as soon as possible without any problems. That's enough to keep me on the straight path. And so I'm just going to focus on doing my time and getting back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't have any more questions for you, Chris. I really appreciate and admire your bravery and your courage to tell your story, and my heart goes out to you, and I really hope that the news that you're waiting for is as favorable as possible for you, and everything can get back on track, or you know um, work itself out as soon as possible, and you can yeah move your life past this. I'm really rooting for you.
I appreciate it. And I appreciate the work you're doing. I appreciate getting the word out about addiction and gambling and the dangers associated with it. So I really appreciate you as well.
Absolutely. I'll reach out to you when the article is live and the interview is live on my channel. So and I'll give you a link to your Substack so people can follow you as you continue this journey.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Chris. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take
Bye.
care.